Welcome, everybody, and welcome to Embracing Christianity here on God's People Say. I am Robert, and tonight, spiritual warfare and how it affects us. Today, I'm going to be sharing a story that happened to me not long ago and happened with a good friend. As you know, I had a breakthrough about a year and a half ago where it changed my whole entire life. And it took me about a year and a half to go through this. But in order for me to tell you this story, I need to be able to, for you to understand what happened. I have a really good friend of mine who him and I had worked together previously on a radio show, and him and I were very close. We're really good buddies. And him and I, we did a lot of talking. I mean, we talked all the time. And him and I would talk on the phone almost daily. And we had a really good relationship where we could talk, like I said, we could talk about anything. We talk about political side, we talk about music, we could talk about pretty much anything. And it just was a really good, buddies, like buddies would talk about anything. And through the years, him and I would talk. And not only that, we had a really good chemistry on the air. We would talk to, have really good shows. We had a lot of good celebrities on our show. We had a lot going for us and everything. Our show started in 2010. We were on the air for a very long time. We had a 2 point something million listeners for, like I said, for a really long time. And things happened. He had some marital problems that happened during this time where it kind of pulled him away from it. And then things happened where our show kind of ended up, the radio station ended up going dormant, and just life happens. And so the show went away. The radio station flourished for quite a long time after that, but after a while, it kind of dwindled out. The light dwindled. And so after that, we decided we wanted to get it back going again. And so we talked and talked, and we wanted to get the flame started again. And so him and I would talk and talk. And for uh, right before the pandemic started, we were in midst of putting we were going to go into doing not only the podcast, but we were going to also introduce the video side of, doing YouTube and, him being on video, me being on video, and kind of doing what I'm doing right now, but doing the podcast side of it. And that was something that we were going to do. And we were in the planning stages of doing that. And it was really getting exciting at the time. Of course, then the pandemic hit. I got really sick. And it just, everything went south. So I ended up in the hospital, really sick. I ended up in recovery. And then during that time, he was there for me when I was in my recovery for a couple years, and he would talk to me every single day. He was there for me every single day. I didn't have anybody else there for me. My wife had left me. I didn't have anybody to talk to who would talk to me every single day. He was the person who would pick up the phone. He would talk to me for hours on the phone. And um, and then there was this moment in when I got to go back to work. And when I got to go back to my normal job, there was a time when, okay, so let me just go back a little bit. I had to learn how to walk all over again. So I had braces on my legs. I had to walk with, I had to have a walker. Then I went from a walker with braces, my braces, and then a cane. And Then I went back to work and I had a cane and braces, and that's how I got around. And so when I got back to work, during that the physical therapy and all that other stuff, it was like during that time I was still talking to him, but at the same I was going to church because that was the time when my wife had left me and I was trying to uh, kind of trying to put the Lord back in my life, and I wanted to change my life around at that moment. And I was listening to different pastors on YouTube during the day while I was at work or on my way into work or during the mornings when I was getting ready to come into work and certain things like that. And then usually at night was the times when I would talk to my friend. And so I would spend these times reflecting on all the stuff that was going on. But on Sundays, I would go to church and I would get to talk to certain people at the churches. And I was always looking for answers from different people. And I didn't seem to find people who I could talk to, certain people that I could reach out to and get the answers. It didn't seem like anybody had the answers for me or nobody would take the time. And the church um would put people in my life that were um kind of like they're like they they put one guy with me one time just to make sure that I wasn't going to commit suicide or anything like that. And you know, I had other friends who I could talk to and things like that. But during this time, me and my friend were always talking about, yeah, let's get the radio station up going again. We can do this, we can do that. And everything was going good. And then, okay, so I'm going to start building up to this. So then one day I um I had this 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 one day I was on my way into work and I heard this sermon from Sadie Robinson, and she was talking about her testimonial when she was a young girl, when she was this story about Simon, and Simon when he was on the boat with Jesus, and she had a this deal about him, you know, being on the boat and him throwing in the net. And that was kind of my breakthrough moment. And that was what made me, that was the starting point right there, where was the pivotal point for me right at that moment when I decided that change my life. I needed to take, I needed to take another direction instead of going towards the radio station. I needed to take a different approach. And although my friend knew he knew something was changing, I knew he knew this because I had told him, I said, you know, this isn't going to work out. I need to go another direction. And he wanted to hang on. He wanted to make sure that we had some equipment. He helped me out with some things. And although my mind wasn't set on the radio station anymore, my mind was set on building this ministry, God's people say. And so I started out where I thought I was going to jump right into it. And I heard this voice out there saying, you know, don't waste your time. This is never going to happen. And then the what I really heard was, this is what I heard. I heard, listen, okay, he's never going to do this. He's never going to be able to have the time. He's never going to be able to have the time to do this. It's this is you need to do this by yourself. You need to go in this direction, and down the road, you know, whatever may happen may happen. but this is never going to happen. The old radio station is never going to happen. Um, and so I I couldn't just cut. I couldn't, to this day, I really haven't really cut it out completely because I think that there's somewhere down the road there might be something tangible that I might be able to bring something back to it and maybe do something with it. But as of right now, I don't think that there's really anything that I can do with it. And um, I just don't want to really let it go that much. But I do know that the Lord had spoken to me and at that time and is telling me that this is the new direction that I needed to go in. So, um, and that was like, and a year later, not quite a year later, I shouldn't say a year later, but almost a year later, I had decided to I had to make a commitment. And him and I were still talking on the phone and I was telling him I was making a commitment. I was going to get baptized. And when I decided to get baptized, I when I was telling him I was getting during right before I was going to get baptized, one thing I did notice though is right before I was getting baptized, the months leading up to it, the conversations that him and I were having were something I was noticing. It seemed like the closer I was getting to God, the closer that I was becoming to get closer to God, it seemed like the conversations that him and I were having were much different. It seemed like it seemed like the conversations we were having were like it was like repeats. Like it wasn't the conversations that we used to have. It was the conversations that are like one-sided, one like it was like it was the constant this, and this. It was the hatred, it was the political, it was this fault, this person's fault, this person's fault, this person's fault. And it wasn't always like this was on him. It was my problems, his problems, you know, all these other things. It was always negative, negative, negative. There was really no positives in our conversations. And I started noticing that probably 6 months prior to me getting baptized. And I didn't really say anything much about it. I just had that feeling. And the closer it got up towards my baptizing, I started kind of cutting back probably about, I'd say, 3, 4 weeks prior to me being baptized. I started saying, I'm gonna, for the first time, I can tell you that it's like I remember there was days that I stopped talking to him, and I'm sure it was like, well, he didn't call today, and like, are you okay? And I'm like, yeah, I'm fine. I just didn't feel like talking today and stuff like that. And I um and so I decided that I wanted to get baptized. And I knew what being baptized was going to do. And I wanted to make that commitment because I wanted to be 100% in. I wanted to follow Jesus. I wanted to be 100% in. I want this more than anything in my life. And I'm shuddering right now because I don't think people understand what it means to be 100% in and how good of it feels to be 100% in. It's the greatest feeling in the world to be 100% in. And you can't just say it, you have to be in, and I'm in. And I just feel so good saying it. But the day came and when I got baptized, And I was so grateful that day. And when it happened, it was such the greatest day of my life. It was so warm and it was so just, and I had such a great mentor at the time, and she was so wonderful. And the church was so great. EJ and Dave and Dad and everybody was there. All the people that was supposed to be there was there, and and it was just such a great feeling. And then, of course, my mentor, she had told me that once you got baptized, that the spiritual warfare was going to be a lot worse. That there was going to be, the you thought that the veil or was lifted from your face before you, it's really going to be lifted. And she wasn't kidding. She was so not kidding. And it took me just a very short time where I noticed that the world was much different. It was so different. And in a way, I was so happy, but I was also disappointed. There's disappointment because I was more disappointed in the church and disappointed in because I was more like expecting this 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 feeling of I was like I was expecting this light of rays to open up in the sky and and everything else, but it didn't happen that way. What I felt was is I felt this warmth come through me, and I felt this feeling I've never felt before. And and it's like my eyes were open to something I've never seen before. And then I had this knowledge I've never known before, and I started seeing people the way that I never seen them before. And I started seeing the world like I've never seen it before. And the disappointment in the way that I've never seen disappointment like I've never seen it before. And so then when I started speaking to people and I started hearing people the way that I never heard them before. And that's when I started understanding God's word more. I started understanding when I would listen to the Bible and listen. And that's when I started listening to the gospel more. Excuse me, started listening to the gospel more. Everything started making more sense to me. And my mentor, when she would speak of the certain things, when some of my friends would talk to me in the way that they would talk to me in the words, and then when I would sit in church and I would hear the pastor talking to me, the things that he was speaking to me now made perfectly good sense. The prayers and everything started making sense. And then I started learning how to pray, what to pray for, how to pray, what, praying out loud, what not to pray out loud. And, all these things the knowledge started coming into my head. And it was such a great feeling. So, and then of course, um, there came this very, very long period of time where I didn't talk to my friend. I seen him on some of the social, like on Facebook Messenger mostly, is where I would see him. He would send me messenger deals all the time, which I really didn't pay no attention to because I didn't like the uh, things that he would send me. It's not that I didn't like him, I just didn't pay no attention to him. Because he would send me like jokes and things like that had to do with pets and sometimes music things and with no harm. It was nothing really bad, but I just tried to stay away from some political things as well. But I stepped away from a lot of those stuff, and I completely stepped away from all political and the mainstream media. Completely. I didn't want nothing to do with that. I went after that. I stepped away from that. I watched it's kind of like stepping away from it. I didn't want nothing to do with that. Because you get enough from it, believe me, you can try to run from it, but you get enough from it no matter what. I I just did some of my own little Instagrams and a little bit of TikToks here and there, doing my own little thing, trying to and doing what I'm doing right here, and doing these things. But the so um anyway, so as the weeks progressed and things like that, is he's married to a Filipino girl who is I trying to co-sponsor to get her here to the United States. And he is have been having a lot of problems getting her here. And in my mind, um, before all this transpired, before this stuff happened, before this my baptism, before this breakthrough, before, I was more than happy to help out. I was really excited about having her. I wanted to see him happy. I wanted to see this all come through. And then and then so I changed my jobs, and so there needed to be some change in the paperwork. And then he contacted me, and they were acting like, oh, he's so happy to talk to me. And oh, by the way, while we have you here, we need some paperwork changed. And it just kind of made me cock my head a little bit. And I'm thinking, so the only reason why you're really getting hold of me is because you need something from me. Now, okay, so it kind of rubbed me a little bit, and I'm trying to minister to him in a way that I'm trying to get his, I'm trying to think, here's one of my best friends, and I know that here's the thing I know about him. One of the things I know about him is I know he's got a good heart. I know that I know that he believes in God. I know that he's I know that he's given his heart to the Lord. He has a great story about how he's had where one time he says he committed suicide. One time he has a story about where he talked to Jesus and stuff, and he has this really good story about this about these things, and he's very passionate about some of the things that he does. um, Without a doubt, I'm sure that he has this in him. But at the same token, him and I have talked about this. But okay, so then when I was in the hospital and I almost died, I, there's a whole story behind this, but there's this point where him and I have kicked back forth about me almost dying in the hospital, and then he has his near death experience, and I have my near death experience, and all these other things. But I'm not trying to I'm not trying to at all trying to say that what happened to me has anything to do with what's happening now. But what I'm trying to do for him is there's something inside my mind that just recently happened. And so he's trying to get this paperwork from me, and he's trying to be, because things are, the immigration is coming up, and he's wanting to get this stuff done. So, he wants to talk to me. And so one day, he he texts me, and he sends me this text about his son, it's a story about this one kid, and I just say to him, I said, "Look, I'm not interested in hearing this, watching this. It's a it's a it's a story about a kid who has seizures, and because his son is a addict who is having problems, and my friend and his wife are divorced, and his son is an addict, and he has seizures because he's addicted, and his wife buys his son um uh drugs to that causes the seizures, and my friend does nothing to prevent this stuff from happening. And they're both really bad parents is what I'm saying. um and and that's where this whole thing, this is where this is going to. So hang on. Okay. So anyway, so he wants to have a conversation with me. He wants to talk on the phone with me. And I really don't want to talk on the phone with him at this point. I'm really, really not wanting to talk on the phone with him. And so I'm to this point, right at this point where in my mind I'm saying to myself, going, I I'm reluctant to talk to him because I already know where the conversation's gonna go. And it's like the predictable. You already know what's going to be said. You already know how it's going to be said. You know what's going to be said. You know how it's going to be gone and everything, and you're just hoping. So prior to this conversation even taking place, I was telling you in that text message, I said, "Look, I don't want to hear about this." And he's like, well, he comes back and he goes, well, it had to do with my son. I thought you'd want to hear about my son. I'm sorry. I know it's about your son, but that's between you and your wife. So he wanted to talk to me. He sent me a text message. He said, it'd be nice to talk to you. I said, well, we can talk today after I get out of work. I'll call you. And so I thought that you would take that as a hint that I didn't want to talk to him. So anyway, so I sit I I get out of work that day. The first thing I do is I have a certain amount of time to be able to talk to him. I have about 35 minutes to be able to talk to him. And so I get out of work, I punch out, I get in my car, I call him, and I start talking to him. It's not more than 3 minutes, and he's already talking about his son, and he's talking about, and I mean, about his son having seizures. He's talking about how his ex-wife is to blame for it and all these things. And I'm silent on the phone. And I think there comes a point in there where he's silent. He's wondering if I'm listening. And I say to him, I go, yeah, I'm still here. I'm listening. And he's like, well, I'm just kind of letting you I'm just kind of wondering if you're listening or all. I go, yeah, I'm listening. And in my mind, I'm still, during the conversation, I'm like, yeah, I know. And then I kind of broke in. I said to him, I said, listen, I go, I really, 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 I know you wanted to talk about this stuff, but here it is. I go, I, I really, I don't, I go, I don't mind talking to you, but I'm telling you right now, I'm in a totally different place right now. And I really want to be able to help you, but the only way I'm going to be able to help you is I need you to be in the same place I'm at. And so I started ministering to him about walking in the right path and about being in the right place and with his heart and walking in the same and the things that he has to be able to do. You have to give up these worldly things. You have to be able to walk away from the worldly things. You have to be able to give up these things. And you can't be doing these things that you think are are right. And you can't have these crazy, desires and stuff like that. And I said, it's maybe the reason why you can't get your wife here is because, your wife is a person that's walking in the light and you're not, and so the conversation him between him and I are getting, it's like he's letting me talk, and then suddenly he breaks into the conversation and he says to me, he goes, well, how do you know that I'm not supposed to be ministering to you? And I stop and I shake my head and I go, and I just like, okay, all right, well, here, let me finish. And then I start talking a little bit more, and then he goes, well, he goes, you do know that I gave up eating pork. I stopped eating pork. I stopped eating pork, because God told me in the Bible 17 times in the Bible to stop eating pork. And I said to him, I go, look, I think that's great. I think it's great that you stopped eating pork. But that's between you and God. There's really no law that says that you have to stop eating pork. I go, it's great that you do it. I think it's kind of cool that you do this. I think it's really good that you do this, but it's not going to get you into heaven. That's not the thing that will get you into heaven. That's not going to be a notch in your belt that will get you into heaven. When you stand in front of God, when you stand in front of him and he asks you, why should I let you get into heaven? You think that that's going to be the one thing that's going to get you into heaven? No, it's not going to be the thing that's going to get you there. I go, that's between you and him. That's your thing, you know? And and then, and of course, it's not that I won that one. And then I'm talking a little bit more, and I'm trying to explain to him what the difference is, and then he says, "Well, how do you know I'm not walking in the light?" And I'm like, and and didn't dawn on me quite yet. Just so you know, it's not dawning on me. It should be dawning on me, but it's not dawning on me. But and you can see the irritation on me right now because it's starting to get to me again. But I'm sitting there going, because if you were, we wouldn't be having this conversation. We'd be talking about totally something different. We wouldn't even be talking about what we're talking about. We wouldn't even be having a conversation about you and your son. We wouldn't be having a conversation about none of this. We would be talking about totally something different. We wouldn't even be talking about this. I go, and not only to mention that, maybe your wife would be here by now and all these other things, everything that we were talking about. And then and then I'm sitting there talking to him and saying that, and then he knows that one of my breakthrough deals, it has to do with Simon. And then he goes, so who d- who cut off Malachi's ear? A- And I just completely, right at that moment, I just said to myself, what does that have to do with what we're talking about? And I go, why do you keep interrupting me? Why are you continuing? Why are you? And he just kept going on and on and on. And then it dawned on me. It hit me. I was getting so frustrated. I was getting so frustrated that it dawned on me. And then I said to him, I go, dude, you don't see, it's not your fault. This is not your, it has nothing to do with you. It has nothing to do with me. It has to do with the demons that are not wanting to let you go. They're not wanting to let you go and they're holding you back. They're not wanting to let you hear what I'm hearing. It's trying to tell you. I go, they're attacking you. They're attacking me. They're attacking me right now. And I can't have that. I have to end this phone call. I have to end it right now. I cannot talk to you anymore. I'm sorry. I have to end the phone call right now. I love you, brother, and it has to end right now. So we ended the phone call right then. And man, I hung up the phone, and next thing you know, for the next 10, 15, 20 minutes, I was talking to myself, Lord, 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 why did I let that happen? Why? I was just going on and on and on and on and on. Just and then not only for that minute time, but I'm telling you, this bugged me for days. I could not this and I mean it wore me out. It physically and mentally drained me because I love my friend that much that I allowed that much it that's how bad those demons affected me to to the point where I worried about it every single day. I tried to do videos to talk to him. I tried to do spiritual videos to talk to him. I tried to do everything I could to talk to him after the fact. And it just got to the point. And then, okay, so it wasn't over after that, by the way. It wasn't over after that phone call because what it did come back is it came back to that night, that next morning. Okay, I did a video and um I actually sent a text message or not to him, but I sent one to his wife and I said, I'm gonna have to rethink me sponsoring her. And then the attack came where I did this for you, I did this for you, I did this, you owe me this, you owe me that, you owe me this, you owe me that. And I that morning, before I got that response from him, I had done a video to him saying exactly what he would say word for word because I was saying to him, these are things I would like you to do, and not as blackmail, but as saying, I wasn't going to say that, but I was going to say to him, I was going to say, listen, I'm really, having a hard time trying to back up the fact that I have to try to sponsor this, but I'm just not feeling good about this anymore because I don't feel that I should be doing this anymore, not at all. And it's just I don't feel that God wants me to do this and I know how you're going to react and this is probably what's going to happen. Now you're going to go off on the handle, you're going to say this, you're going to say this and boy when I sent that message, that's before he even saw the video and that's before I even sent the video because I can send a video to him privately, and boy, if I guaranteed that he did it exactly word for word for word. And so I was just like, oh my gosh, he did exactly. And it was like this evil that you've never seen. And then, and then yeah, and then the other things that I kept trying to tell him is you don't if you are set, if you are so committed to the Lord, if you're so committed, you don't have to keep on telling me I have a relationship with God. I pray every day with God. I do this for God. Pray for this for God. I do this. I pay for this. I pay for that. You don't have to do that. You don't have to do that. If you want to walk in the same path, if you want to do this, everybody would know it. Everybody would do this. And the thing about it is you don't have to have nothing to prove. There's nothing to prove. People will know by your fruits. And you just can't say it. You can't, it's just not something that happens. It just, it's just when you are in 100%, it's just like, it's, you know, it's like this one time. Um, I heard this one young lady say one time, she says, you can't be a Christian and be of the things of the world. You have to die. You have to die. And when I went underneath the water, I died. The old me died. That was what that's what happened to me. And so when I went underneath the water and new me was born, this is the new me. This is my new life. This is everything. And this is why I'm doing what I'm doing right now. And it, he just can't, he just can't go and run into a church and say, hey, baptize me, and go underneath the water and expect it to be the same for him. He has to do it for the right purpose. He has to do it for the right conviction. He has to absolutely want this more than anything in his life and to mean it. And he has to absolutely mean it because he's and this is why I I try and try and try to explain this to him, and to the point where I literally had to um say later this week, I had to tell him that I have to walk away from this 100%. Um, I still love him. He's still a friend to me, but I have to love you from afar. I cannot allow this ever to affect me anymore, to have this, come into me anymore. And I want to tell this story because if anybody else has ever having this kind of spiritual warfare in their life where they're going after somebody, you just can't help them. You can't help them. That's it. You cannot continue to go after somebody if their the claws are dug in too deep. My mentor told me that there was absolutely nothing I could do for this person. She told me to walk away from this person a long time ago. She told me that there was nothing that I could do for this person, that he is absolutely not worth going after, that God has to deal with this person. She told me this. And it was nothing that we could pray for him. We can pray for him and pray, and that's all we could do for him. There's nothing we can do but pray for him. And to waste our time, and that's all we can do is to just pray. And 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 if we're praying, at least we're praying for him. We're not ignoring him. We're praying for him and letting God deal with him the way that we need to deal. So he will be in my prayers. He will be in my prayers. And I'm not going to discard him ever, but he will be in my prayers. And, you know, he might be the type of person, he might retaliate more. He might come at me more. He might, want to attack me more, but it's all going to fall on deaf ears because I can no longer listen to it. I can no longer be a part of it because I need to go forward with my plan and what God has for me. I need to watch my life of all this old stuff, all these old problems, all this old stuff that just doesn't mean that much to me anymore because this is my new life. This is the new me. I need to move forward. I need to move forward and do these things that are right for me. So, anyway, I'm glad that I hope that anybody who watches this that can understand. Hey, I'm still trying to get some people to get on here with me. Hopefully, I can find some new guests to come on here. Follow and share if you would, and leave some comments below. And I hope to talk to you guys soon. God bless and have a really good day or good night, whatever you're at. All right. Bye bye.